Welcome, everyone. You are at an Entrepreneurs Forever deep dive. Today's topic is emotional intelligence for your small business. And I am delighted to welcome our presenter today, Virginia Crocker Timmins. Virginia is one of our Entrepreneurs Forever facilitators. And by the way, Virginia, you take the best meeting notes of anyone I've ever seen. It's she also has many other outstanding qualities, and today we're going to be learning from her about emotional intelligence. Let me just go through some housekeeping before we get to Virginia. We will introduce ourselves, explain who Entrepreneurs Forever is. I always like to take a moment to mention the upcoming programs, because if I don't do it beforehand, I never get to it at the end. Virginia will do her presentation, and we always stop the recording before the Q&A. So if you have a particular issue you want to thrash through with Virginia, you have an expert and you don't have to worry about it being recorded and being heard by people on the recording. Again, today's topic is emotional intelligence in your small business. And I will tell you, I'm not the most emotionally intelligent human myself. When people hire me to be their coach, I tell them I'm a business coach. I'm not nice enough to be a life coach. I don't know if that's true or not, but Virginia is actually very thoughtful and has an amazing set of credentials, which she'll tell you about. One of our facilitators, and she's going to be talking about how being emotionally intelligent is important in your business. I think most, if not all of you know who Entrepreneurs Forever is, but I always like to make sure. Our mission is to empower all small business owners to grow thriving businesses that sustain their families and support their communities. I believe most of you are members, but if you are not already a member of one of our peer groups, you can join us at one of these weekly information sessions. The link is online. The upcoming learning opportunities I want to mention to you: hiring your first employee. Monday, June 24th is our deep dive at 4 o'clock. And I have another outside expert, Sarah Franks, coming to talk about that. And then content creation for your small business. So if you're trying to figure out what you should be posting on social media to get you business, how to get it created, my co-presenter for that one is going to be Entrepreneurs Forever's own Director of Marketing, Angela Mena, and you can register for that at our website as well. This is a special one. On Wednesday, June 5th, you will have a chance to join us for online speed networking to meet people across our whole network. And actually, a bunch of you have come to many of my events and have probably interacted with a few of the others, but this will be an official chance for you to be in virtual networking groups. Pre-registration for this one is a must. You can't just decide the day of to come, because I'm going to create a little directory of everybody who's coming. I know I've seen a couple of these names on here, and I'll be glad to see you on June 5th. But if you didn't register yet, this is your official reminder. And finally, my disclaimer, and then you're going to stop hearing from me, is this presentation does not take the place of professional advice from your own paid advisors. So I'm going to hand things off to Virginia. I'm going to share her handout with you. And I'm going to remind you that for the most part, we like to keep your questions about your situation to the end when we're not recording. If you just have a clarifying question or you want to ask Virginia to make something a little bit clearer in a general sense, you are more than welcome to use the chat or raise your hand and I can unmute you. But for the most part, we're going to keep those to the end. Virginia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Deborah, and thank you for that great introduction. There we go. Is that showing up okay?
It is, just fine.
Great. So I'll just provide a quick introduction about me and my company. My name is Virginia Timmins. I am a business and executive coach. My company is Soundboard Advisors. I have been had my coaching practice for a little over 8.5 years now. And I chose the name Soundboard Advisors because I like piano music. And if you think about the soundboard inside of a piano, it's where the vibrations inside that instrument get transformed to the music that we hear on the outside. And I like to think of emotional intelligence as one of those things that helps us with that inside out transformation, the more that we understand it and the power that lies in it when we can develop the skills that are associated with emotional intelligence. Just my background, my education is in engineering. I spent 28 years in corporate industry. And during one of my executive positions, I had a coach, and that's what really got me interested in getting into the field someday, because it was really transformative for me. So with that, I will proceed. I like to always just kind of break down the term, thinking about the definitions. So if you look up the words emotional and intelligence, emotion is that part relating to your emotions. So these are the things that are characterized by feeling. And they are the things typically that have a characteristic of excitability, or things that you can observe because they are openly displayed. The intelligence, the definition of that is to be able to acquire and apply knowledge or skills. So when we put those two things together for emotional intelligence, what we're talking about is your capacity to be aware of and to express with some degree of control your emotions, and to handle your interpersonal relationships, not only empathetically, but judiciously. So, and we'll dive a little bit more into that. But with that, this is the one time I'm just going to ask for a little bit of feedback on the recording, if you are comfortable. You're all here because I don't know what attracted you to this topic, but does anybody want to offer a thought or two in general terms as to why emotional intelligence might be important to your business?
You can either unmute or you can type in the chat box and I'll read it out loud, but it's
Yeah.
not usually a shy group. So why did you want to come today? Why do you think this emotional intelligence issue is worth spending some time thinking about? No one?
Hi, Colette Jones here. I, for one, would like guidance in where that fine line is between friendship and boss and employee.
Okay. Any other thoughts in terms why is this topic important to you?
I think it helps connect the customers and clients and your contractors or your own vendors, helps you understand their needs and how to, work more easily and more productively with them.
Yep, great. Thank you, Mike.
We have a couple of that are great ones in the chat. Somebody says, I'm good with the dogs that I train. I struggle with the people. And Jordan, who I know owns a restaurant, says, because of the diverse background of my employees and how their upbringing impacts their performance at work. That's a really good one. Thanks, Jordan.
It's a really good one. Okay. Anything else there, Deborah?
Nope.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and move on. So whether you're a solopreneur where you have to, maybe you're leading yourself and influencing others, or if you have employees or contractors that you're leading, your ability to understand and manage your emotions is statistically proven in terms of your ability to lead, the impact that it has on that. And my affiliate company has looked at research that estimates that 75% of a person's ability to succeed can be linked to successfully understanding emotional intelligence. And I love the comments that were made earlier about they're all relationship based, whether it's the clients that you have and or your friends who maybe are employees, or even contractors and other people that you deal with. So the first part of this is based on Travis Bradbury's work, Emotional Intelligence 2.0. And Bradbury looks at EI, emotional intelligence, in terms of two competency areas, your personal competence and your social competence. So personal is about me and social is about others. And then in each of those competencies, you can think about how does that competency or the skills relate to what you see and then what you do, often based on what you see. So in the upper left quadrant, when we talk about personal competence and what you see, we're talking about now the skill of self-awareness and being aware of your moods and emotions, or even being aware of what drives you. And then understanding how those moods and emotions or how you act because of what drives you affects other people. When you are aware of that and you can observe that in yourself, or you pick up the cues in yourself, then we go to what do you do with it? And that skill we call self-management. And so this is where, if necessary, you can control or redirect your actions. If you're the kind of person like I can be sometimes, where you jump to judgment quickly, you can kind of cue yourself to pause and suspend judgment till you really understand. And if you're one of those people that maybe does ready, fire, aim, right, and acts before you really think, this would be a place where you can pause and think before acting. So that personal competence is about the skill of self-awareness, understanding your own moods and emotions and drivers, and then understanding, now that you know that, what do you do with it when it comes into play? In the bottom half of the quadrant, the chart, is the social competence area and the skills in social competence. So social awareness is understanding and being aware of the emotional makeup of other people. And, sometimes these are people you know well, and you can say, oh, there they go again, right? But sometimes it's somebody that maybe you don't know. Maybe it's the server at the restaurant having a bad day, or somebody that makes you angry on the road or in the supermarket. So it's really honing in that skill of being aware of the emotional state that somebody else may be in, whether or not you understand why, and understanding how your words and actions can affect them. And then the what I do part of social competence comes down to the skill of relationship management. So this is now where you're saying, okay, how can I use this situation to positively influence the other person? And how can I use my awareness of what's happening here to more effectively manage the relationship in the moment and potentially long term? So this gets into, you can't always control what's happening around you, but you can control how you react to it. And sometimes, they talk about we have different ego states, like, a parent or an adult or a child ego state. When somebody's in an emotional state that you're in a position to help bring into a more constructive place, that's where we say maybe tap into our inner adult, right? Which tends to be more the rational, facts-based, rather than jumping on the bandwagon and helping the situation to escalate. This can actually work in a non-negative context too, right? If you observe somebody's in a state of joy for some reason, your response to that can be to help them leverage that, right? Or help bring that into wherever the end objective is, to get to a more productive place. So these 4 skills, in terms of the personal and the social competence, looking at what you see and what you do, are foundational to Bradbury's work in emotional intelligence. So I'm going to jump into that a little bit more. I'm sorry, I'm going to switch gears to Daniel Goleman, who's another well-known author on emotional intelligence. And he built on Bradbury's work, where he now added the connection of motivation to emotional intelligence. So what Goleman looked at is individuals who are looking to accomplish things for themselves, also with the ability to make a difference and to do those two things simultaneously. And so this involves external motivators, looking at what's driving us, what's motivating us to achieve our goals, and what fuels our own emotional intelligence in terms of our awareness and our awareness of others to run deeper. And there's some examples here, but basically what Goleman is saying is individuals that have a higher level of emotional intelligence tend to decide to do things personally and professionally with a higher purpose in mind. So they are aware of, maybe they feel compassion for the homeless, but now they're going to do something and put some action behind that to make a difference for the homeless. And so these are the people who are looking to accomplish things for themselves with the desire to make a difference simultaneously. If you start to look at how that would apply in terms of your passion for work, this is an area where you look at how do you go beyond that external drive for knowledge or the external drive for whatever you have in your surroundings or the utility in terms of the tools and tasks that you do, and transform that into a propensity to pursue your goals with energy and persistence. When you're motivated that way in terms of making a difference, what you find is that the attitude and the culture of your organization tends to change in a positive and more productive way. And I'll share a personal experience with you. When I was in the defense industry, we had a CEO who came in. I was working in a very high-tech field, and we were providing technology to, defend our country, defend the military. Well, we had a CEO who kind of reframed what we did a little bit, and he tied it to an emotional pull where what we were there to do was to protect the people who were protecting us. So we weren't just the what of what we were doing was the technology, but he tied it to protecting the soldiers, airmen, and sailors who protected our country. And you could see the shift in the employee attitude and the culture, because everybody was kind of targeted on that emotional pull of and that purpose and the passion behind protecting those who protected us. Another example might be like Walt Disney, right? So he created a pull in his organization where he said the purpose of having a customer is to have them help create another customer. And so everything became service to the customer and service above self. And when his employees coupled that passion to their awareness of what they did and the awareness of the people they were serving, it provided it provided that attitude beyond just doing the work that helped shape the organizational culture.
I really like that, Virginia, but let me ask you this question, and this maybe is beyond what we can talk about today. I totally agree that if you have a team that's motivated and all rowing the same direction with a passion and a cause rather than just a paycheck, that it's a much better place to work. Everyone gets along better, internally and externally. How do you make that happen when you're running this small business?
How do you make it happen?
Yeah. How do you bring that about?
I think some of it we're getting probably a little bit outside emotional intelligence, but when you have kind of a clear vision of where you want to go to, you have your vision and your values, right? And that creates a sense of alignment and a sense of purpose for the organization. And I think being clear at the top of where you want to go and what are the non-negotiable values around which you and your employees operate and around which you will hire and fire, and that you want to emulate for the customers that you serve is one way to help drive that alignment. And then through that process, you wind up, so let's say one of your values is, say, respect, okay, or integrity. Now you're building in the human connection. And I think the other way you do it, Deborah, is by example. So as you can master the skill of the social and the self-awareness and what you do in terms of the awareness that you have of yourself and others, you start leading by example and other people emulate that. So if you're in a meeting and there's an emotion that's escalating and your response isn't to jump on the escalation of that emotion, but your response is to bring it back to the adult facts-based discussion, you're now setting an example where, without even saying it, you're saying it's not acceptable for us to just keep escalating with each other, right? We're gonna get together and we're gonna row in the same direction.
That makes
I don't know
perfect
if I'm getting,
Yeah, that was really helpful. Thank you.
okay. So I want to talk a little bit about emotions and feelings. And I think sometimes it's often a tendency in business to shy away from emotions and feelings. And it's really important to recognize that you and others have emotion and feelings, and you don't check them at the door when you come to work in the morning. People don't have a personal life and a professional life. They have one life. And sometimes there are things professionally that are affecting us personally, and sometimes there are things personally that are affecting us professionally. And while we don't need to understand the details of all of that for every person, when we can at least recognize that every day somebody's carrying something around with them emotionally, it helps make us more effective in our organization. And you really just can't disconnect the two. There's an example here from my affiliate company. There was a trucking company that had 26,000 employees and over 300 terminals, going on to 400. And they actually deliberately brought in training and practice for fostering emotional intelligence over a 3-year period. And what they found at the end of the 3-year period was they wound up saving $6 million. They decreased the number of injuries by 43% annually, and they decreased their accident rate by 41% per year. And they attributed that to the skills development in emotional intelligence that helped them work more constructively together and toward the objectives for the organization. So I want to talk a little bit about self and social awareness and kind of how that works. So the first piece is having the ability to recognize that emotions and feelings come from inside you. And it's okay to honor that, right? We all have emotions and feelings. We don't always control them well. But it's important to honor that we have that and they come from inside of us. They're not created externally. And it's really about how you and only you can control and handle your emotions. And once you understand that, then you can better control your emotions and channel your energy more productively, both personally and professionally. One example I could give here is, you know, have you ever watched a movie and started crying, or heard a song and, you know, it maybe brings a smile to your face or brings tears to your eyes? Well, we don't react because something in the movie or the song caused us to feel happy or to feel sad. What's really happening is something in that movie or that song triggered something from inside of us. And that thing that was triggered from inside of us is what caused us to feel the emotion. So I like to think of that example when we think about what does it really mean that your emotions come from inside you and not from around you. And it's the same thing when you feel like, you know, somebody's causing you to be angry. Well, maybe what they're doing is making you angry, but it's because it's connected to something inside of you that it feels in conflict with how you would prefer to have things. And then if we go to the external part, with the self-management and relationship management. So when you are seeing an emotional response from someone else, the thing to keep in mind is that that emotional response is 100% about them and it's 0% about you. Just like on the previous slide, your emotional response is 100% about you, not about what's going on around you. When they're having an emotional response, it's the same thing. There's something that's triggering something from inside of them. And so it's not about you. And when you can even recognize that in the moment, that can help give you grounding to not let your own emotions escalate and rise. And then what you want to do is be able to have the strength and courage to, like I said, kind of mentally step out of the emotional moment and maybe approach it from our adult side. Because when we can't manage our own emotions, that has this way of just accelerating or escalating a bad situation and making it worse. Make sense?
Can I just ask you a question? What
Sure.
happens when something you say, which, as you just pointed out in the music example, sets someone off and they have a very emotional response? You're in a conversation with them or you're in a meeting or something. How do you react when you know it wasn't what you said or did that set them off, but they're set off anyway? In some way, they're feeling something.
What I like to do is first, again, honor that what's happening with them or acknowledge it, right? So I understand you're feeling angry, right? And then go on to the next fact-based thing. I understand you're feeling angry. We need to get this done by the end of the day. Do you think maybe we could talk about this issue? Right? So you're trying to, you want to acknowledge what they're feeling or acknowledge that they are feeling. Right? Because when you blow it off or just pretend it doesn't exist, sometimes that can make it worse. If what you said wasn't, out of line and you didn't intend to flip a switch to set them off, I think it's kind of your judgment call. If you said something maybe that was insensitive, you can apologize and try to move on. But if there's something that's going on inside of them, that's something that you said triggered it, I would try to bring it back to the facts, acknowledge that they're feeling a certain way, and then try to bring it back and see if you can get them to disengage from the emotion in order to finish the conversation that you're trying to have. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
Okay. So these are just some characteristics of high emotional intelligence that you can observe in others or that you can also practice with yourself. A big one is change, right? There's a lot of emotion sometimes around change. And so when you see people or organizations that are embracing change and not fearing it, that's a huge sign of a highly emotional intelligent person or organization. The self-awareness that we talked about, sometimes people are trying to lead a balanced life or they feel more empathetic towards other people. They display more empathy. I love the next one, being curious and open-minded and inquisitive. Deborah, to your question that you asked on the previous slide, that's another thing that you can do, is turn it in, take it away from emotion and to dig a little deeper. Well, can you tell me why you don't agree with that? Or can you tell me what you would do differently? Right? Or can you tell me what you're thinking about? And so that curiosity, also builds up our awareness of other people and our ability to help manage and funnel the conversation. And then people and organizations that are generally grateful and happy or gracious, that's another sign of emotional intelligence or high characteristics. And I would encourage you just to reflect for a moment. We don't have to take it into discussion now, but think a little bit about in your own experience, when you've observed other people who seem to have a high degree of emotional intelligence, or you've been part of an organization that does, are there other characteristics that you've observed? You might want to just make note of that or jot it down. And then if we think about what can we observe when we're with somebody or in an organization that maybe doesn't have a high degree of emotional intelligence. That's where someone is systematically unable to control their emotions. Sometimes it happens in the moment. People may just be ambiguous to other people's feelings. It may appear that they just really don't care how other people feel. There's no empathy. You'll see a lot of struggle in terms of interrelationships. And someone at the beginning brought up emotional intelligence as being critical to forming those strong relationships. They may also just be difficult to read. So a lot of times people who have low emotional intelligence will tend to hide behind the poker face. And not want to show any vulnerability either in terms of, joy, sadness, anger, feeling grateful. They'll just hide behind that, and they can be very difficult to read. So again, I'd like you to just think about either people or situations you've been in where maybe you've been able to observe some characteristics of low emotional intelligence, and see if there's any other characteristics that come to mind. So these are just some steps that you can take to enhance or foster emotional intelligence. Again, you're going to have emotions, but the key is being able to observe them. It's not about being wrong because you're having certain types of emotions or being right because you're having certain types of emotions. It's simply the awareness that you're having them without trying to fix them. And then this is where the real control comes in. Start observing how you're reacting to others. And then look at what are some of those recurring patterns, either that you see in yourself in terms of how you react to others, or that you see in others because of how you're reacting. Okay, because if you're seeing recurring patterns that you'd rather not see, maybe there's something that needs to be adjusted in terms of how you are reacting. And then again, just commit to being more open and accepting of others' perspectives. I love this one. Think about how you react in stressful situations. Because oftentimes, we can be emotionally intelligent 80% of the time, but if that stress point gets triggered, we'll lose it. And I know I do. So think about how you're reacting in stressful situations. And is there a trigger that you can feel coming on where you can say, uh-oh, here it comes, and you can somehow mentally give yourself a pause, even if it's for a few seconds, to say, okay, how do I regroup and react differently in this situation? And then again, take responsibility for your actions. If you did do something that requires an apology, give it. If there's something that you can do to help bring a little bit more of that adult and productivity into the conversation, by all means, do it. Okay. So I'm going to just show a video before we go into discussion. This is a video that was developed several years ago by the Cleveland Clinic. And they did it with the intention of trying to get their employees to think about how could they provide better health care if they were more aware of other people, or even more respectful of what they might not be aware of in other people. And this really, I'll just tell you a little story from a personal front. When I was in my corporate career, I had a relative who was recovering from a serious medical issue, and I was in and out of work on FMLA. And I came into the office one day, and one of my peers knocked on my door, and I didn't know him very well, but he said, "Hey, Virginia, I heard about your situation. I just wanted to say how sorry I am." And he shared with me that he had just come back from a few days visiting one of his relatives who was in a very serious medical situation. And his comment to me was, if there's anything I've learned in the last few weeks, it's that every day somebody's carrying some piece of their journey line around with them. and I will never know what it is. And whether it's somebody at work or somebody I see in the grocery store, that recognition that every day someone's carrying something around with them emotionally because of their journey has totally transformed the way I interact with people and how I respond to them. And I didn't understand it at the time, but I understand it now, that what he was talking about was his own discovery of emotional intelligence. And so with that, I'm going to share this video with you.
We lost the screen share. You need to bring the screen share back.
I had to change.
Okay. Well, that was pretty intense, Virginia.
So with that, Deborah, I don't know if we can open it up for discussion if you're ready to
Yeah,
stop.
you know what? I'm gonna turn the recording off, and so we can react to this and then talk about how we see this all manifesting in our lives and in our business. Because as you point out, as much as we'd like to be two different people, our personal and our professional lives, it's still us, right?
Yeah. And especially when we're